The notification came at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. I was sitting at my kitchen counter in my apartment in Chicago, scrolling through emails while my coffee grew cold, when my phone buzzed with a CNN breaking news alert. American Airlines Flight 447 from Miami to Los Angeles reports emergency situation. Possible hijacking in progress. My blood turned to ice. Sarah was on that flight. My hands shook as I fumbled with my phone, nearly dropping it as I pulled up her last message from 2 hours earlier. "Boarding now. See you at Christmas, little brother. Love you." With a selfie of her smiling at the gate, her UCLA medical school sweatshirt visible, that infectious grin that had gotten us through our parents' death 5 years ago. No, 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 no. I immediately called her phone. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Nothing. My heart hammered against my ribs as I switched to the news, and there it was on every channel. A Boeing 737 with 186 souls on board, somewhere over Texas, hijacked by 3 armed men. The reporters spoke in that careful, measured tone they use when they don't want to cause panic, but can't hide their own fear. The aircraft departed Miami International Airport at 6:15 a.m. Eastern Time, the anchor said, her face grave. "We're receiving reports that the hijackers have made demands, though the FBI has not released specific details. Flight 447 was scheduled to land at LAX at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time." I stood frozen in my kitchen, watching the flight tracker on my laptop showing that small plane icon moving slowly across the digital map. Inside that tiny symbol was my sister, my only family. The person who'd held my hand at our parents' funeral, who'd called me every single day during my darkest moments after losing my job last year, who'd flown out to Chicago just to make sure I was eating properly when depression had me in its grip. The woman who'd saved me more times than I could count was now trapped in a metal tube at 35,000 feet with terrorists. My phone rang. Unknown number. My finger hesitated for a split second before answering. "Hello? Marcus Chen?" The voice was official, clipped. "This is Special Agent Diana Morrison with the FBI. We understand your sister, Dr. Sarah Chen, is a passenger on American Airlines Flight 447. Is she okay? What's happening? I need to... Mr. Chen, I need you to listen carefully. We're handling the situation, but we've been informed that your sister managed to send a message through the aircraft's Wi-Fi before communications were cut. She indicated you have specialized knowledge that might be relevant to our current situation." My mind raced. Specialized knowledge? I was a cybersecurity consultant, formerly with the NSA, before I'd left for the private sector. Sarah knew about my background, knew about the systems I'd helped design, including, oh God, she remembered. "Mr. Chen, are you still there?" I designed part of the emergency override protocol for Boeing's flight management systems," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "When I was with the NSA, it was classified, but Sarah knew. She knew I worked on something involving aircraft security." There was a pause. "Mr. Chen, we're sending a car to your location immediately. Pack nothing. Come as you are. Time is critical." The black SUV arrived in 4 minutes. I was hustled into the back seat by 2 agents who said nothing during the ride to O'Hare International Airport. My mind kept replaying every conversation I'd had with Sarah about my work. I'd been careful, always careful, but siblings know things. She knew I'd spent 3 years on a classified project called Guardian, an emergency system designed to allow ground control to override a compromised aircraft's controls in extreme situations. The system had never been fully implemented. Too controversial. Too many concerns about it being hacked or misused. But the protocols existed, buried deep in the aircraft's computer architecture, dormant and waiting. Only a handful of people knew the activation sequences, and I was one of them. At O'Hare, I wasn't taken to the terminal, but to a restricted area where a Gulfstream jet sat waiting, engines already running. Agent Morrison met me at the aircraft stairs, her expression grim. "We've established a command center at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio," she said as we boarded. The hijackers have made their demands. They want the release of 3 prisoners from federal custody and safe passage to a non-extradition country. They've given us 2 hours. Where's the plane now? Circling over New Mexico. They're making the pilots fly in a holding pattern while negotiations continue. Mr. Chen, I need to be direct with you. Can your systems save that plane? I strapped myself into the leather seat as the jet began to taxi. Guardian was designed for exactly this scenario, but it was never fully tested on a commercial flight with passengers. The risk of not acting is 186 dead Americans. Morrison cut me off. Including your sister. Our negotiators are stalling, but these men, our profilers, believe they're prepared to die. This isn't about money or prisoners, it's about making a statement. Through the jet's window, I watched Chicago disappear below us. Sarah was up there somewhere, terrified, probably thinking about the same thing I was. How we'd promised each other after our parents died that we'd always be there for each other, that we'd never let each other face anything alone. Tell me about your sister, Morrison said, perhaps sensing I needed to focus on something other than the technical challenges ahead. She's brilliant, I said, my voice catching. 3rd-year medical student at UCLA. She wants to be a pediatric surgeon. She volunteers at free clinics on weekends, speaks 3 languages, and I paused, swallowing hard. She's the strongest person I know. If anyone can stay calm up there, it's Sarah. Morrison nodded. We've been monitoring social media. Before the hijackers confiscated phones, several passengers managed to post. Your sister was helping keep people calm, moving through the cabin as much as the hijackers would allow, checking on elderly passengers and children. Of course she was. Even facing death, Sarah was taking care of others. The Gulfstream's pilot announced we were beginning our descent into San Antonio. 40 minutes had passed. We had less than 90 minutes before the deadline. Mr. Chen, Morrison said, leaning forward, what do you need to make this work? I closed my eyes, running through the sequences in my mind. I need access to Boeing's secure servers, a direct satellite uplink to the aircraft's communication system, and I opened my eyes, meeting her gaze. I need to talk to my sister. The hijackers cut communication. No, I said, feeling a spark of hope for the first time. They cut the normal communication channels. But if Sarah remembers what I told her about the maintenance diagnostic system, there's a way. There's always a back door. I just need to show her how to find it. The command center at Lackland was controlled chaos. Dozens of screens showed the hijacked plane from every angle. Satellite feeds, radar tracking, even footage from fighter jets that had been scrambled to shadow Flight 447. In the center of it all was General Patricia Hayes, a woman whose very presence demanded attention. Mr. Chen, she said without preamble, Agent Morrison has briefed me. You have 14 minutes to establish communication with the aircraft before I have to consider other options. Military speak for shooting down a plane with 186 innocent people aboard, including Sarah. I was rushed to a terminal where Boeing engineers had already established a secure connection to their servers. My fingers flew across the keyboard, entering passwords I'd memorized 5 years ago, praying they hadn't been changed. The first 2 levels of security accepted my credentials. The third requested biometric confirmation. I placed my hand on the scanner, holding my breath. Access. Granted. Marcus Chen, Level 9 clearance. Project Guardian. I'm in, I breathed. Around me, technicians and military personnel leaned in closer. Now I need to access the aircraft's maintenance diagnostic system. It's a separate channel from the main communications array used by ground crews to run system checks. The hijackers wouldn't even know it exists. Can you send a message through it? Better, I said, pulling up the interface. I can establish a text-based communication link, but someone on the plane needs to access the maintenance panel. It's in the rear galley, hidden behind what looks like a standard electrical box. General Hayes stepped forward. And you think your sister will know to look for it? When I was designing Guardian, I was paranoid about security. I used to joke with Sarah about it. Told her that if she was ever on a plane that got hijacked, to look for the box marked AUX PWR in the rear galley. I made her memorize it because I paused, embarrassed. Because I was paranoid. After our parents died in that car accident, I became obsessed with emergency scenarios, with always having a backup plan. Thank God for your paranoia, Morrison muttered. I initiated the diagnostic protocol, and a simple text interface appeared. I typed, "Maintenance check required. Please confirm system status." We waited. 30 seconds. 60. My heart sank. Maybe Sarah hadn't remembered. Maybe she couldn't get to the panel. Maybe... Words appeared on the screen. "Marcus, is that you?" "S." The command center erupted in controlled excitement. I typed quickly, "Yes. Are you safe? How many hijackers? Weapons? 3 men, guns, maybe explosives. They separated crew. I'm in back galley. They don't know about this. Scared, Marcus." My eyes burned with tears I couldn't afford to shed. Not now. "I'm going to get you down safe, all of you. Trust me. Need you to do exactly what I say." "Always trust you, little brother. What do you need?" General Hayes leaned over my shoulder. "Ask her about the hijackers' positions and state of passengers." I relayed the questions. Sarah's response came quickly. 1 in cockpit with pilots, 2 in main cabin, walking aisles, passengers scared but calm, several injuries from initial takeover. I've treated what I can. They have what looks like bomb vest on leader. "Sarah, listen carefully. I need you to access a hidden panel. From where you are, look up. See the overhead compartment marked F4? Yes. Open it. Behind the life vests, there's a panel with a keypad. Enter 7739824. There was a pause. Then, panel open, circuit boards and switches. "Marcus, what is this?" "Your way home." That's the manual override for Guardian system. "But Sarah, once we activate it, the hijackers will know something's wrong. Plane will respond differently. We need a distraction. How long do we have?" I looked at the clock. "Hijackers' deadline is in 52 minutes. "Understood. Marcus, remember when we were kids? That game we played?" I frowned, then understood. When we were children, Sarah and I had a game where we'd create elaborate distractions so one of us could sneak cookies from the kitchen. She was about to do something dangerous. "Sarah, no. Too risky. Trust me, like I trust you. Give me 5 minutes, then activate your system." The connection went silent. I turned to General Hayes. "She's going to create a distraction." "Mr. Chen, we can't risk..." "You don't know my sister, General. When she says she'll do something, she does it. 5 minutes." Those 5 minutes were the longest of my life. The command center fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the occasional update from the fighter pilots shadowing the hijacked plane. I kept my eyes on the screen, the cursor blinking in the text interface, waiting for Sarah's signal. At 4 minutes and 30 seconds, the radar operator called out, "The aircraft is changing altitude. Dropping fast? No, wait. Leveling out. What the hell?" The communication officer's headset crackled to life. "We're getting something from the plane. It's the emergency frequency. A passenger is broadcasting." They patched it through to the speakers, and Sarah's voice filled the command center. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen aboard American Airlines Flight 447. We have a medical emergency. A passenger is having a cardiac event. I'm a medical student, and I need to use the aircraft's emergency medical equipment. The patient needs immediate attention or he will die. Please, whoever is listening, relay to the hijackers that I'm not a threat. I'm just trying to save a life." General Hayes looked at me. "Is this the distraction?" Before I could answer, we heard chaos through the transmission, shouting in a foreign language, Sarah's voice staying calm but urgent, explaining medical terms, other passengers crying. The brilliant thing was that Sarah was speaking partially in Mandarin, which she knew would confuse the hijackers and make them uncertain. "Now," I whispered, turning back to my terminal. "She's got them focused on her." My fingers flew across the keyboard, entering the activation sequence for Guardian. The system had been my obsession for 3 years. Every line of code memorized, every protocol burned into my brain. But activating it on a live commercial flight with passengers, we were in uncharted territory. The first phase was establishing a secure connection between the ground control system and the aircraft's flight management computer. The screen filled with data as Guardian reached out through satellite uplinks, finding the unique identifier for Flight 447, handshaking with its systems. Connection established aircraft AA447, Boeing 737-800. Status, airborne, manual control. Guardian protocol, ready to engage. I have control capability, I announced. But the moment I take over, the pilots will lose all manual control. The hijacker in the cockpit will know immediately. General Hayes made the call. Do it. I initiated the override. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the radar operator called out. Flight 447 is responding to ground control commands. We have positive control. Through the emergency frequency, we heard the confusion escalating. The hijacker's voice from the cockpit shouting. The pilots trying to explain they'd lost control. And through it all, Sarah's voice, still maintaining her medical emergency story, buying us precious seconds. I programmed the new flight path, directing the plane toward the nearest suitable airport, Kirtland Air Force Base, right here in New Mexico. Military personnel were already being positioned, emergency crews standing by. But then the lead hijacker's voice came through the radio, speaking accented English. You think you're clever? You think we don't know what you've done? You have taken control of the plane, yes? But you cannot control this. There was a pause. I have a dead man's switch. If my hand releases this trigger, everyone dies. Return control to pilots now or I detonate. The command center froze. I looked at the screen showing Sarah's last message. Trust me, like I trust you. Mr. Chen, General Hayes said quietly, if he has a dead man's switch, he's bluffing, I said, though I wasn't sure. Sarah would have mentioned it. And if you're wrong, I thought about my sister, about her face at our parents' funeral, about her hand in mine as we stood at their graves and promised to always protect each other. Then I'll have killed 186 people, including the only family I have left. The plane is 15 minutes from Kirtland, the radar operator announced. Through the radio, we heard Sarah's voice again, but this time she was speaking in English, clear and strong. This is Dr. Sarah Chen. The medical emergency has been stabilized. I'm returning to my seat now. Then, in Mandarin, she added something that made my blood run cold. She was telling me, in our childhood code, that she was going to do something we'd sworn never to do. Something our mother had made us promise after our father's brother died in a failed robbery attempt. She was going to fight back. No, 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 I shouted at the screen, typing frantically, Sarah, don't! Stay safe! But the maintenance channel had gone silent. She'd moved away from the panel. Through the emergency frequency, we could hear the tension escalating. The lead hijacker was screaming now, demanding control be returned. The pilots were trying to calm him, explaining they couldn't override whatever was controlling the plane. Passengers were crying. And somewhere in that chaos was Sarah. 10 minutes to Kirtland, the radar operator announced. Agent Morrison pulled up the manifest on her tablet. Your sister, it says here she has martial arts training. Black belt in Krav Maga, I said numbly. Our parents insisted we both learn self-defense after there were some incidents at school. Anti-Asian harassment. Sarah took to it better than I did. She competed in college, won nationals twice, so she's not exactly helpless. Against 3 armed men? She might as well be. But then something happened that none of us expected. Through the radio, we heard a child's voice, high and terrified. Please, mister, my mommy needs her medicine. The lady doctor said she needs it or she'll die. Please. It was brilliant. Sarah had coached a child to create another layer of distraction. The hijackers were debating in their language, one of them apparently arguing to let the child get the medicine. 8 minutes to Kirtland. Then we heard it. A struggle, shouting, the sound of impact. The lead hijacker's voice, you think you can fool us? You think... His words cut off in a grunt of pain. Sarah's voice, breathless but determined, nobody move! I have his gun! The switch. Someone needs to... A gunshot. Screams. My heart stopped. Sarah! I screamed at the monitor, typing her name over and over into the maintenance channel. Another gunshot. More screams. Then a different voice. Male, older. This is Captain James Mitchell. The cockpit is secure. The hijacker here has been subdued. Passengers have restrained the other two. We have injuries. We need immediate medical assistance upon landing." The command center erupted in cheers, but I couldn't breathe. "Sarah," I whispered. "Where's Sarah?" "Captain Mitchell." General Hayes spoke into the radio. "This is General Patricia Hayes, United States Air Force. Can you confirm the status of all hijackers?" "All three are subdued, General. Passengers and crew have them restrained." "But we have wounded. The young woman who led the resistance, Dr. Chen, she's been shot. She's still conscious, but—" The world tilted. I gripped the desk to stay upright. "How bad?" Hayes asked what I couldn't. "Shoulder wound. She's treating herself with help from passengers. She says to tell her brother she kept her promise. She says the switch was fake. The vest has no explosives, just wires and clay. She figured it out when she was treating passengers earlier and got close enough to see." My legs gave out. I sank into the chair, tears flowing freely now. She'd risked everything on her observation, on her medical training, telling her the difference between real explosives and fake ones. "5 minutes to landing," the radar operator announced. "Emergency vehicles in position." I watched the plane icon on the screen descending toward Kirtland, each second an eternity. Sarah was hurt, shot, but alive. The plane was landing. Guardian had worked. We'd done it. But the victory felt hollow with my sister bleeding 35,000 feet above. I stood on the tarmac at Kirtland Air Force Base, the desert heat shimmering off the concrete, making the approaching plane look like a mirage. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, ambulances, fire trucks, SWAT teams, FBI tactical units. Everyone was ready for anything, even though we'd been assured the situation was under control. General Hayes stood beside me, her hand briefly touching my shoulder. "She's tough, your sister. She'll be okay." I could only nod, my eyes fixed on Flight 447 as it descended. The Boeing 737 touched down smoothly at 10:47 a.m., Captain Mitchell's expertise evident even after the trauma he'd endured. The plane taxied to a stop away from the terminal, immediately surrounded by emergency vehicles. The stairs were brought up, and the door opened. FBI tactical teams entered first, followed by paramedics. I started moving toward the plane, but Agent Morrison held me back. "Let them do their job, Marcus. She'll be out soon." The next 15 minutes were agony. Passengers began emerging, some walking on their own, others assisted. I saw children clinging to parents, elderly people being helped down the stairs, all of them with that shocked, distant look of people who'd faced death and survived. Each face that wasn't Sarah's made my chest tighten more. Then the paramedics emerged carrying a stretcher, and even from 50 yards away, I knew it was her. I broke free from Morrison's grip and ran. "Sarah!" She turned her head at my voice, and despite the blood on her shirt, the IV in her arm, the oxygen mask over her face, she smiled. That same smile from her selfie this morning, a lifetime ago. I reached the stretcher as they were loading her into the ambulance. "I'm her brother," I said to the paramedic. "Please." He nodded and let me climb in. I took Sarah's hand, careful not to disturb the IV. "Hey, little brother," she said weakly, pulling down the oxygen mask. "Told you to trust me." "You're insane," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Absolutely insane. Taking on 3 hijackers? What were you thinking?" "I was thinking," she winced as the ambulance started moving, "that my brother was risking his career, maybe prison, by activating a classified system to save me. Least I could do was help out a little." "A little? Sarah, you got shot." "Just a graze," she said, though the paramedic's expression suggested otherwise. "Marcus, the system you built, it worked. You saved everyone." "You saved everyone. I just flew the plane." She squeezed my hand. "We saved everyone, just like Mom and Dad would have wanted. We looked out for others, not just ourselves." The paramedic adjusted her IV, adding something to it. "We're giving her something for the pain," he told me. "She'll probably drift off." Sarah's eyes were already getting heavy, but she fought it. "Marcus, the other passengers, make sure they're okay. There was a little girl, Emma. She was so brave. She helped with the distraction and missed her." Petrov, he's the one who tackled the second hijacker when I went for the leader. And the flight attendant, Janet, she kept everyone calm even with a gun to her head. They're all heroes. I'll make sure they're taken care of, I promised. Now rest. As she drifted into medicated sleep, I held her hand and thought about how wrong I'd been all these years. I'd always thought I was the protector, the one who needed to keep Sarah safe. But she'd proven today that she was the warrior in our family, the one who'd inherited our parents' courage, along with their compassion. The ambulance pulled into the University of New Mexico Hospital, where a trauma team was waiting. They whisked Sarah into surgery, and I was left in the waiting room, still in the clothes I'd thrown on this morning in Chicago, my phone buzzing constantly with calls from media, government officials, and numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them all and called the one person I knew Sarah would want me to contact, her boyfriend, David, who was probably watching the news in Los Angeles, terrified. Marcus? Oh God, is she? She's alive, I said quickly. In surgery, but the doctors say she'll be fine. She's a hero, David, a genuine hero. The story broke worldwide within hours. CNN, BBC, Fox News, everyone led with it. Brother-sister team saves hijacked flight. By evening, someone had leaked my identity as the Guardian system designer, and Sarah's actions on the plane had been pieced together from passenger testimonies. I spent 3 days in that hospital waiting room, only leaving when David arrived from Los Angeles to take shifts. Sarah's surgery had gone well. The bullet had passed through her shoulder without hitting anything vital, though she'd need months of physical therapy. On the 3rd day, she was finally coherent enough for real conversation. Her room had become a flower shop. Bouquets from passengers, from airline staff, from complete strangers who'd heard the story. The president had even sent an arrangement with a personal note. "You look terrible," she said when I walked in that morning. "You look like someone who got shot," I countered, sitting beside her bed. "Fair point." She shifted, wincing. "Have you watched the news?" "I've been avoiding it." Sarah grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. The footage was surreal. Passengers from Flight 447 being interviewed, all of them talking about Sarah's bravery, her quick thinking, her compassion, even in the midst of terror. Emma, the little girl who'd helped with the distraction, appeared with her parents. "The lady doctor was like a superhero," Emma said to the reporter. "She was scared, I could tell, but she protected us anyway. She told me being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when you are scared." Sarah's eyes welled with tears. "I was terrified, Marcus, the whole time. When I saw that gun pointed at me, but you acted anyway, because of you," she said. "When I saw your message on that maintenance screen, when I realized you'd found a way to help us, I knew I had to be as brave as you were being. You risked everything, your clearance, your freedom, your entire career, to save us." There was a knock at the door. Agent Morrison entered, followed by General Hayes and another man in a suit I didn't recognize. "Ms. Chen," the man said. "I'm Director William Carter, National Security Agency. I wanted to personally thank you for your extraordinary bravery. And Mr. Chen, what you did with the Guardian system was completely illegal," I finished. "I accessed classified systems without authorization, activated a program that was never approved for deployment." Director Carter smiled. "Actually, as of this morning, the President has signed an executive order retroactively authorizing your actions and officially deploying Guardian as part of our aviation security infrastructure. You're not going to prison, Mr. Chen. You're getting a commendation. Both of you are." Sarah looked at me, then at the officials. "The hijackers. What happened to them?" Morrison answered. "They're in federal custody. They were part of a larger cell we've been tracking. Thanks to intelligence gathered from this incident, we've prevented at least 3 other planned attacks. Your actions saved more lives than just those on Flight 447. After they left, promising a proper debrief once Sarah was recovered, we sat in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, Sarah spoke. "Mom and Dad would be proud." "They would," I agreed, "though Mom would also lecture us both about taking unnecessary risks." Sarah laughed, then gasped as it hurt her shoulder. "Remember what Dad used to say? Family means nobody gets left behind. Or forgotten. I finished the quote. That's why I had to act. I couldn't leave you up there, and I couldn't let you carry that weight alone. We're a team, Marcus. Always have been. 2 weeks later, Sarah was released from the hospital. The media frenzy had barely died down. We'd done exactly one joint interview with Anderson Cooper, where we'd emphasized that the real heroes were all the passengers and crew who'd worked together. But the story had taken on a life of its own. Hollywood producers were calling. Book publishers wanted our story. The airline offered us lifetime first-class passes. It was overwhelming, and all we wanted was to go home and return to normal life. Except there was no normal anymore. I'd been offered a position as Director of Aviation Cybersecurity for the Department of Homeland Security. The Guardian system needed to be properly implemented across all U.S. carriers, and they wanted me to lead the project. Sarah had been accepted for early graduation from medical school. UCLA wanted to fast-track her into their surgical residency program. Every hospital in the country wanted the hero doctor who'd saved Flight 447. We sat in Sarah's Los Angeles apartment, boxes scattered around as she prepared to move to a new place closer to UCLA Medical Center. The bullet wound had left a scar on her shoulder, a permanent reminder of that day. "Have you decided about the DHS job?" she asked, carefully lifting a box with her good arm. "I'd have to move to DC. That's not an answer." I sighed. "I designed Guardian to save lives. If I can implement it properly, make sure it's secure, properly controlled, maybe what happened to you won't happen to anyone else. Then you should take it." "But we'd be on opposite coasts after everything." Sarah set down the box and came to sit beside me on the couch. "Marcus, we survived a hijacking with you in Texas, and me in a plane over New Mexico. I think we can handle DC to LA. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Emma's mother, the little girl from the plane. They were inviting us to Emma's birthday party next month. She'd specifically requested we both come. She was calling it her Brave Day party, celebrating choosing courage over fear. "We're going to that, right?" Sarah asked, reading over my shoulder. "Absolutely." Sarah leaned against my shoulder, her good one. "You know what the strangest part of all this is? I'm not afraid of flying anymore, even after everything, because I know you're watching over me, even from the ground." "Always," I said, "though maybe next time you could just take a train?" She laughed. "Where's the adventure in that?" That night, I called Director Carter and accepted the position. Sarah called UCLA and confirmed her residency. We were both stepping into new chapters, forever changed by those terrifying hours when Flight 447 hung between life and death. The news cycle eventually moved on to other stories, but the bonds formed that day remained. We stayed in touch with many of the passengers. Captain Mitchell invited us to his retirement party the following year. He'd decided he'd had enough excitement. Janet, the flight attendant, became one of Sarah's closest friends. Mr. Petrov, the passenger who'd helped subdue the hijackers, started a foundation for victims of terrorism. And Emma? She sent us drawings every month, pictures of planes landing safely, of doctors helping people, of brothers and sisters holding hands. She signed each one the same way. "Love, your brave friend Emma." The anniversary came faster than expected. I stood in the conference room at DHS headquarters in Washington, looking at the statistics on the screen. In 1 year since Guardian's implementation, we'd prevented 7 attempted hijackings. The system had worked flawlessly each time, allowing ground control to safely land compromised aircraft. But that wasn't why I was nervous today. Sarah was flying in from Los Angeles for the anniversary memorial service. Flight 447's crew and passengers had organized a reunion at a hotel in Dallas, halfway for everyone. It would be the first time we'd all been together since that day. My phone rang. Sarah. "Hey, just landed at DFW. David's getting the rental car. How was your flight?" "Uneventful, thankfully." "Sarah, are you ready for this?" There was a pause. "It's strange. I've saved lives in the OR this year, had patients' code on my table, dealt with trauma after trauma. But thinking about seeing everyone again, being in that room with all those people who shared the worst day of our lives, Yeah, I'm nervous. We don't have to go. We could just... No, she interrupted. We're going. These people are family now, in a weird way. Trauma bonds, my therapy group calls it. She'd been seeing a therapist all year, working through the PTSD. I had too, though I hadn't been on the plane. Survivor's guilt, my therapist said, was real, even when you were the one who helped save everyone. That evening, the hotel ballroom was filled with familiar faces. Captain Mitchell, gray-haired and distinguished, pulled me into a bear hug. There's the man who flew my plane better than I could have, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You landed it, I reminded him. Once you had control back. Details, he winked. Janet rushed over to embrace Sarah, careful of her shoulder even though it had long since healed. Dr. Chen, did you see? Emma's here. The little girl who'd been so brave was now 8, taller, still wearing that same determined expression. She ran to Sarah and wrapped her arms around her waist. Dr. Sarah, I wrote a report about you for school. I got an A+. That's amazing, sweetheart, Sarah said, kneeling to Emma's level. What did you write about? About how being brave is a choice, and how heroes aren't just in movies. Sometimes they're doctors who are scared but help anyway, and brothers who break rules to save people. Mr. Petrov approached me, his thick Russian accent unchanged. Mr. Marcus, I have something for you. He handed me a wooden box. Inside was a handcrafted chess set. I make these now, retirement hobby. This one is special, see? The kings and queens are styled after you and your sister. Heroes deserve to be remembered. As the evening progressed, people shared their stories of the past year. Many had struggled with anxiety, with flying, with trust. But they'd also found strength in surviving, in the bonds we'd formed. Then Captain Mitchell called for attention. I'd like to say something. A year ago, we faced evil, but we also witnessed the very best of humanity. Sarah Chen, barely out of medical school, took on armed hijackers. Marcus Chen rewrote the rules of aviation security in real time to save us. Every passenger who helped, who stayed calm, who protected each other. You're all heroes. He raised his glass. But I want to share something I've never told anyone. In those moments when I lost control of my aircraft, when I thought we were all going to die, I heard my daughter's voice in my head. She died of leukemia 5 years before Flight 447. She said, Dad, it's not your time. Someone's coming to help. And then Marcus's override kicked in. Call it coincidence, call it whatever you want. But I believe we were meant to survive, all of us, for a purpose. The room was silent, many wiping away tears. Sarah stood up, her hand finding mine and pulling me up with her. Captain Mitchell is right. We survived for a purpose. Emma, you've raised thousands of dollars for children's charities with your Brave Day campaign. Mr. Petrov, your foundation has helped dozens of families. Janet, you've trained hundreds of flight attendants in crisis management. We took the worst day of our lives and turned it into something meaningful. She looked at me. My brother and I lost our parents 5 years before the hijacking. We thought we knew about loss, about fear, about holding on to each other when the world falls apart. But all of you taught us something more. That family isn't just blood. It's the people who stand with you in the darkest moments, who choose courage when terror would be easier, who refuse to let evil win, which brings us to why we really gathered tonight, I added, pulling out an envelope. Sarah and I have been working on something. With the compensation from the airline, the government rewards, and the book advance we accepted, we've established the Flight 447 Foundation. It will provide funding for aviation security research, support for terrorism survivors, and scholarships for students pursuing careers in emergency medicine and cybersecurity. The room erupted in applause. Emma's mother was crying. Captain Mitchell saluted us with military precision. Even the hotel staff, who'd been quietly serving, stopped to clap. Later, as the formal program ended and people mingled, Sarah and I stepped out onto the balcony. The Dallas skyline glittered before us, planes visible in the distance approaching DFW Airport, their lights blinking steadily against the dark sky. Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if that morning had gone normally? Sarah asked. Every day. You'd be finishing medical school the traditional way. I'd probably still be in Chicago working corporate cybersecurity. And 186 people might not be alive, she added softly. Or all those people on the 7 planes Guardian has saved since then. When you put it that way. Marcus, can I tell you something? That day, when I saw your message on that maintenance screen, when I realized you'd found a way to help, it was like hearing Mom and Dad telling me everything would be okay. That my little brother would always have my back, just like he promised at their funeral. I pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of her shoulder that still ached sometimes. And my big sister would always protect everyone, even if it meant facing down armed hijackers. We make a good team, she said. The best, I agreed. The morning after the reunion, my phone started buzzing at 5 a.m. I groaned, reaching for it in the dark hotel room, expecting maybe a work emergency from D.C. Instead, I saw dozens of notifications from news apps, social media, and messages from colleagues. Marcus Chen and Dr. Sarah Chen establish Flight 447 Foundation. Survivors Unite for Global Impact. Someone at the reunion had live-streamed our announcement. The video had gone viral overnight, 3.2 million views and climbing. Hijacked Flight 447 Heroes was trending worldwide. Sarah knocked on my door at 6 a.m., already dressed and holding 2 coffees. Did you see? Unfortunately, yes. So much for keeping a low profile. Marcus, look at the comments, though. She handed me her phone. They weren't what I expected. Instead of the usual internet cynicism, there were thousands of stories. People sharing their own moments of crisis, times when strangers had helped them, when family had come through, veterans talking about battlefield brothers, doctors describing the first life they saved, parents writing about children who'd survived the impossible. Flight 447 taught us that heroes aren't born, they're made in the moments that matter, one comment read. Thank you for reminding us that we all have that strength inside us. My phone rang. Director Carter. Marcus, I'm watching CNN. They want a statement about the foundation, but that's not why I'm calling. The UN Security Council is convening an emergency session on aviation security. They want you to present Guardian to the international community. And they want your sister there too, to speak about civilian response to terrorism. I looked at Sarah. The UN wants us. Her eyes widened. Both of us? Both of you, Carter confirmed. The world needs to hear your story, not just the Hollywood version everyone's talking about, but the real story. The technical innovation, the human courage, the proof that preparation and bravery can defeat terror. 2 weeks later, we stood in the UN General Assembly Hall in New York, the same room where world leaders debated war and peace. Sarah wore her white coat over her dress. She'd come straight from a surgery at UCLA. I wore the suit I'd bought for our parents' funeral, now tailored to fit the man I'd become since then. Distinguished delegates, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm a cybersecurity specialist and the designer of the Guardian system. But more importantly, I'm a brother who almost lost his only family to terrorism. I explained the technical aspects of Guardian, how it could be implemented internationally, the safeguards against misuse. But then I turned to what really mattered. Technology alone doesn't save lives. It takes human courage to make the difference. It takes people like my sister, Dr. Sarah Chen, who, despite being wounded, helped ensure the safety of 186 souls. It takes passengers like Emma Martinez, only 7 years old, who helped create a distraction. It takes people like Captain James Mitchell, who retook control of his aircraft despite a gun to his head. Sarah took the podium next. I'm often asked if I regret getting involved, if I wish I'd stayed hidden, stayed safe. The answer is no, because in that moment I realized that we all have a choice. We can surrender to fear, or we can stand up for each other. The passengers of Flight 447 chose to stand together, and that's what defeated terrorism that day. Not weapons, not violence, but unity. She paused, her hand unconsciously touching her shoulder where the scar was. My brother and I lost our parents when we were young. We learned early that life is fragile, that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. But Flight 447 taught us something else, that in our darkest moments, strangers become family, innovation becomes salvation, and ordinary people become extraordinary. The assembly erupted in applause. Delegates from 193 nations stood, applauding not just us, but what we represented, the triumph of human ingenuity and courage over terror. After the UN speech, everything accelerated. Guardian was adopted by the International Civil Aviation Organization. Sarah was invited to teach emergency response protocols at medical schools worldwide. The Flight 447 Foundation received millions in donations, allowing us to expand our mission globally. But the most meaningful moment came 6 months later. I was in my DC office when the call came. Sarah was crying. "Marcus, are you sitting down?" My heart stopped. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" No, I just delivered Emma's baby sister. Remember Emma from the plane? Her mom went into labor, and she requested me specifically. The baby's healthy, perfect, and Marcus, they named her Hope. Hope Sarah Martinez. I felt tears spring to my eyes. "That's beautiful." "The full circle of it all," Sarah continued. "From terror to life, from fear to hope. Mom and Dad would have loved this." "They would have," I agreed. Later that evening, I stood on the roof of my D.C. apartment building, watching planes crisscross the sky. Each one carried hundreds of people, families, strangers, stories waiting to be told. Each one now protected by the system born from our darkest day. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Watching planes land at LAX, thinking of you, little brother. Thank you for never giving up on me." I typed back, "Thank you for being brave enough to save yourself and everyone else. Love you, sis." A year and a half after Flight 447, a documentary crew contacted us. They'd interviewed all 186 survivors, the FBI team, the military personnel, even the families of the hijackers who'd been devastated to learn what their relatives had planned. "We want to call it the 3 hours that changed aviation," the director explained. But it's really about more than that. It's about how crisis reveals character, how love drives innovation, how courage is contagious. Sarah and I watched the premiere together in Los Angeles. Seeing our story on screen was surreal. Actors recreating those terrifying moments, the real passengers providing commentary, the actual footage from the command center. But what struck me most was the epilogue. It showed where everyone was now. Captain Mitchell teaching at a flight academy. Janet running her own crisis management company. Mr. Petrov's foundation having helped hundreds of families. Emma, now 10, speaking at schools about courage. And us. The final shot was Sarah and me at the Flight 447 Foundation headquarters, surrounded by photos of all the lives saved since that day. The narrator said something that stays with me. Marcus and Sarah Chen remind us that heroes aren't defined by their lack of fear, but by their decision to act despite it. They show us that the bonds of family, both blood and chosen, can overcome any threat. And they prove that sometimes the worst day of your life can become the catalyst for your greatest purpose. I stood at the podium at MIT looking out at hundreds of cybersecurity students. This was my yearly lecture, the one I'd been giving since leaving government service to teach and consult. Behind me on the screen was the infamous photo. Sarah and me at the UN, her in her white coat, me in my suit, both of us looking impossibly young for what we'd survived. "Who can tell me the first rule of crisis management?" I asked. A young woman raised her hand. "Preparation prevents panic." "Close. Anyone else?" A young man in the back called out, "Trust your team." Warmer. "The first rule is this. In any crisis, you're never alone. There's always someone who can help, someone who needs help, and someone willing to stand with you. Your job is to be all three." After class, a student approached me. "Professor Chen, is it true your sister delivered a baby in the ER while coordinating via phone with you to stop a cyber attack on the hospital?" I smiled. That was last year. Different kind of crisis, same principle. We're a team. Sarah had become the head of emergency medicine at UCLA Medical Center. She'd revolutionized trauma response protocols, incorporating lessons from Flight 447 into medical training. Her shoulder still ached during weather changes, but she wore the scar proudly. My phone buzzed. Sarah, texting from LA. "Turn on CNN." I found a TV in the faculty lounge. Breaking news. A potential hijacking in progress over the Atlantic. As I watched, the reporter announced that Guardian had been activated. The plane was responding to ground control, and all passengers were expected to land safely. The system we'd built from trauma was working. Lives were being saved. That evening, I flew to Los Angeles for our regular dinner. Every month, no matter what, Sarah and I met for a meal. Sometimes David joined us. Sometimes my wife, Catherine, a fellow professor I'd met at a Flight 447 memorial event. This time, it was just us. We sat at our usual table at a small restaurant near LAX, where we could watch planes land as we ate. Neither of us would ever lose our fascination with those lights descending safely from the sky. "Another save today," Sarah said, raising her glass of wine. "Number 43, I confirmed. 43 flights, approximately 8,500 lives. Remember when we thought saving 186 people was the biggest thing we'd ever do? It was," I said. "Everything else grew from that moment, from your courage and a maintenance panel in a galley." Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. From my brother's refusal to let me go. We sat in comfortable silence, watching another plane descend toward LAX. Inside were people going home, starting adventures, living lives that would continue because systems were in place, because people cared, because sometimes, on the worst day imaginable, heroes emerge from ordinary people who simply refuse to give up on each other. "Hey, Marcus?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for being my brother. Thank you for being my sister." The plane touched down safely, its lights twinkling in the distance. Somewhere, families were reuniting. Somewhere, stories were continuing that might have ended. Somewhere, two siblings who'd refused to say goodbye had changed the world. And in a small restaurant near LAX, we ordered dessert and talked about everything except hijackings and heroism. We talked about Catherine's pregnancy, about David's marriage proposal plans, about the vacation we were finally planning to take together, somewhere we could drive to, just to be safe. As we left the restaurant, Sarah stopped and looked back at the airport. "What?" I asked, just thinking. If someone had told us that morning when I boarded that plane that it would lead to all this, we wouldn't have believed them. "No," she agreed, "but Mom and Dad would have. They always said we were meant to do something special. They just probably didn't think it would involve hijackers and classified defense systems." Sarah laughed, that bright, infectious laugh that had survived everything. "Definitely not. But they would have been proud. They would have been terrified," I corrected. Then proud. We walked to our cars, the California night warm around us. Before getting in, Sarah called out, "Marcus, next month, same time?" Wouldn't miss it for the world. As I drove back to my hotel, I thought about all the small moments that had led to that day on Flight 447. Sarah choosing medical school, me joining the NSA. Both of us learning self-defense, the maintenance panel I'd insisted on installing, the fact that Sarah had actually listened to my paranoid emergency plans. Life is a series of choices, small and large, that lead us to our defining moments. Sarah and I had made ours 35,000 feet above New Mexico, connected by technology and love, refusing to let terror win. The call came at 2 a.m., unknown number, but by now I recognized the pattern. "Mr. Chen, this is the National Security Operations Center. We have a situation." A cruise ship in international waters is reporting a hostage situation. The ship's security system runs on architecture similar to your aviation protocols. Can you consult? I was already getting dressed. "Send me the details. And is my sister safe?" There was confusion in the voice. "Your sister?" "She's not on the ship, sir." "I know, just, checking. Send a car. I'm ready." Because that's what we do now. We show up, we help, we save who we can. Sarah in her ER, healing bodies and souls. Me in server rooms and command centers, turning code into salvation. We'd learned the hard way that heroes aren't born. They're forged in moments of crisis, shaped by love, and defined by their refusal to abandon hope. Flight 447 had taught us that. Our parents' memory demanded it, and 186 souls who'd trusted us deserved nothing less than our continued service. The black SUV pulled up outside. Here we go again, I thought. Another crisis, another chance to make a difference, another reminder that the worst day of your life can become the foundation for your greatest purpose. My phone buzzed. Sarah. Just saw the news about the cruise ship. You're going, aren't you? Yeah. Be safe, little brother. Save everyone. I learned from the best. We both did. Love you. Love you too. The SUV sped toward the airport, where another government jet waited. In Los Angeles, Sarah was probably already heading to the hospital, preparing for potential casualties. In New York, the UN Security Council was convening. Around the world, the systems we'd helped build were activating. All because on one terrible morning, when faced with the possibility of saying goodbye forever, we'd chosen instead to fight for hello, to fight for more dinners together, more shared laughter, more chances to save lives and make a difference. The plane lifted off into the dark sky. Below, millions of people slept safely in their beds, unaware of the threats we worked to prevent, the systems keeping them safe, the brothers and sisters who refused to let each other go. That's our story, mine and Sarah's. A story of terror transformed into purpose, of fear conquered by love, of two orphaned siblings who saved 186 strangers and discovered that family extends far beyond blood. It's a story that made global headlines. It seemed like a goodbye when his sister's plane was hijacked, but a brother's courage made global headlines. But more than that, it's a reminder that inside each of us lives the potential for extraordinary courage. We just need the right moment, the right cause, and the right people to fight for. For Sarah and me, that moment came at 35,000 feet. For you, it might come tomorrow, next year, or never. But if it does come, remember Flight 447. Remember that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Remember that technology and humanity working together can overcome any threat. And remember that sometimes refusing to say goodbye is the most powerful hello the world will ever hear. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey of courage, innovation, and unbreakable sibling bonds. The story of Flight 447 reminds us that heroes walk among us every day. They're our brothers, sisters, neighbors, and sometimes even ourselves. What would you have done in Marcus's position? Would you have risked everything to save a loved one? And could you have shown Sarah's courage in the face of armed hijackers? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed or experienced extraordinary courage in a crisis? We'd love to hear your stories of everyday heroes. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of human courage and the bonds that connect us all. Like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of triumph over adversity. Remember, in our darkest moments, we discover our brightest lights, and sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the first day of your greatest purpose. Until next time, stay brave, stay connected, and never underestimate the power of refusing to say goodbye.